Peace, everyone, and good evening. Thank you so much for tuning into this week's Friday Night Bible Study brought to all of you by the Israelite Nation Worldwide Ministries. My name is Miriam, and I am a RISE representative and leader from the Northeast area. I am so excited for the topic we have planned for you guys tonight. I hope you guys are as excited as I am. But before we get into it, I'd love it if the rest of my panel could introduce themselves and tell everyone what areas they're from, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty.
Hi, everyone. I'm Naomi, and I'm from the St. Louis branch. Very excited to be here.
Hi everyone, I'm from Rise. I'm from Rise. I'm in the ATL branch. Happy to be here as well.
What's going on, everyone? My name is Ezekiel, and I'm representing the Toronto branch.
Hi, everyone. I'm Hadassah. I'm from the Northeast branch, and I'm very excited to be here.
Okay, great. We see some happy new moons. Yes, happy new moon to everyone. Happy new moon to my Israelites. Yes, guys, I am so excited for the topic we have planned for everyone tonight. So let's just get into it. Tonight, the title of our Bible study, as you guys saw, was A Leader for the God of Israel. Now, before we get into the topic, moderator, if you could please put the first slide up. Yes, so a leader for the God of Israel. Before we get into the topic, let me just give a little bit of background for everyone. So last semester in university, I was taking a personality psychology class. And in that class, I learned a lot about people's different personality types, the different traits that make up someone's personality, how personalities are something that can change along someone's entire lifespan. It was a really fascinating class. So if anyone's looking into taking a class like that, I would definitely recommend it. But one of the topics that my professor spoke about that kind of stuck with me was the topic of the Dark Triad. Moderator, could you please go to the next slide? Yes. So the Dark Triad, what is the Dark Triad, you may ask? The Dark Triad is a combination of three personality traits, which is narcissism, psychopathy, and oh my God, this word is so hard to pronounce. Machiavellianism, which is known to be a very toxic and damaging part of the workplace. But they're also known to be very high achievers and will do anything to be in a place of power. So no matter who they have to hurt, who they have to step on, they will do it in order to be at the top. And some of the traits that go into these personality traits, like narcissism, are inflated self-worth, entitlement, and little consideration of others. And then for psychopathy, it's dishonest, egocentric, reckless, and cruel. And for Machiavellianism, it's superficial charm, interpersonal manipulation, and impulsivity. So to the panel and to the viewers, have you guys ever encountered people like this, whether it's in school, in the workplace, just in your personal lives? And what was that experience like for you?
I can go first. I don't say I won't say I surround myself around the worst people, but I do kind of see traits in certain people that I've met in my life. Just like this entitlement that they're always better than you, I guess.
Right.
It never really bothered me personally because I'm always kind of worried about my own thing. And I'm never really trying to, get into an argument like, that's what you think. I don't really care. But yeah, I think I have met a few people like that in my past, yes.
Right. Anyone else?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have. I think going through school with a bunch of high achieving people and used to being high achievers, I've met a lot of people that are a little bit selfish or a little bit like not afraid to step on others in order to achieve, which at some point could be like a good thing. Like obviously, like you want to achieve success for yourself or for your family or whatever, but yeah, I've definitely encountered people. I have a couple people in AP classes in high school for
Yeah.
sure. And then going into college, there because these are people um, that can like have a huge goal for themselves, and all they can see is that goal,
Yeah,
and can definitely use some negative tactics in order to get it, which can be a good thing sometimes, but definitely it could also be like a bad thing for sure.
for sure. And they kind of make you feel stupid and less than. And it's like, I know I'm not. So why is it that when you speak to me in this certain way, I feel like I'm so much more like below you and less than you? Like, and you don't want to learn from someone like that, right? Like, you don't want someone around you telling you what to do, how to do it, if they're going to do it in that way. I feel like there are certain ways you talk to people, and being egocentric with your self-inflated personality, like, people aren't gonna want to listen to you. But in media and in culture today, the dark triad is seen as something that's in fashion, and it's a characteristic that people need in the world to succeed, and exhibiting these traits allows for people to be successful in their workplace and allows them to be in very prominent positions, like a politician or a world leader or a CEO, or even characters in books, movies, television shows, wherever. Like, I can see these characteristics and these personality traits in a lot of different facets of life. What about you, Ezekiel and Hadassah? Have you ever experienced these traits in
Yeah,
people?
100%, 100%. I've experienced it directly and indirectly. So my experience comes from military school. So in high school, it
Mhm.
was a very cutthroat environment, specifically because everyone wants to reach and be the top position. Because once you're in that position, you have the ability to, give out discipline to other students. And so whoever had that top position was ultimately, the champion. So I've never seen so many students, backstab one another just to get the position, to rat out each other. There was no trust, there was no honor amongst, each student because everybody wants that position. So it was a very direct environment. But as I got older and going to university, it's the same thing. Like it's almost like all hierarchical structures are built on the same thing. However, it's more covert, it's more indirect.
Yeah.
So over here in my university, everyone's more passive aggressive. They would smile in your face, but then stab you in the back later on. So you just
Hmm.
have to be careful who you're associating with and who you share information with.
For
Well,
sure.
that's how I navigate it over here, at least. But it's crazy.
Yeah.
I definitely have experienced those types of people, even in a group that you wouldn't necessarily think would have a lot of people who exhibit these traits. I play in the band at my high school, and I don't know what it is about high school band, and I don't know what it is, but some of the students, oh my gosh, I can understand why they want to be the best because they want to have the first pieces, and they want to have the solos and the high notes, and they want to be heard, they want to be seen. So I can definitely understand that. But it's like, oh my gosh, it's okay. Sometimes it's okay to have a lower part. And I can definitely see how these traits, how they would help being in business or being in power, because sometimes if you're too nice, it's like you're going to get walked all over. Like if you give people too much, then they're just going to take advantage of you, and they're just going to walk all over you in any way that they can. So I can definitely understand how you have to be a little narcissistic, a little self-inflated, you know what I mean? Just
Right.
so that, I don't know, you don't, if someone says something to you, then you're not like immediately hurt by it, and then you never want to do anything again. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
yeah, for
I,
sure, I
I
Yeah.
get
I
experience.
definitely agree with that. I mean, there is an extreme, of course. We can talk about a bunch of dictators or evil villains in any sort of story,
Right.
But there is a sense of like, you don't want to go through life with a soft skin or not do anything selfish for yourself or not have any sort of charm or way to communicate with people. So there are aspects of these traits, and I'm not saying to be narcissistic or psychopathic or you know, but there are traits that are useful, especially to in high achievers. Like even when you go to a job interview, a lot of times they ask you, why are you the best candidate for your job?
Right, exactly.
In that question alone, right? You're supposed to exhibit some sort of confidence. You might even in that interview show some manipulative tactics, something to get the job. And so I
Right.
think it's very useful when, as a young adult, trying to go through life to build that tough skin and to build up your repertoire of these life skills of being kind of tough and high achieving, sometimes a little bit selfish, but I think they're to the extreme is definitely like not okay.
Right. And a little bit, like you said, Naomi, like a little bit of these traits can go a long way. But it's when people are really extreme with it and you're like, I'm so sorry. Did you not see what you just did? Or do you not see how you're talking to me?
Yeah.
Like, why would I listen to you? When
Mhm.
it's just like a little bit too much. And
Oh,
for the audience, some examples of the Dark Triad so you guys can like kind of understand what we're talking about are people like President Putin, Joseph Stalin, Hitler, Mao Zedong, Mussolini. So a lot of prominent world leaders in the past and in the present exhibit a lot of these traits. But we also see the states of their countries and their empires while they were in power. And it wasn't really the most positive experience for the people under them, as well as the people they were ruling over. So when I learned about this personality trait, I thought about the fact that it's literally the exact opposite of what the God of Israel would look for in a leader for his people. So moderator, could you please bring up the next slide? Okay, right. And then the slide after this, please. Okay, so what does the God of Israel look for in a leader? As we know, the God of Israel looks for the opposite. He doesn't look for the most narcissistic person. He doesn't look for the person who's going to be the most selfish. He doesn't look for the person who's at the end of the day going to put themselves above their people. He's going to do the exact opposite. So, to my panelists and to the audience, what are some traits that you guys think the God of Israel looks for in his leaders?
well, me personally, I do kind of think he looks for confidence, but I think in confidence in a different way. Not so much
Mhm.
confidence in our own abilities or in yourself, but confidence in him and who you are as an Israelite. Just being one of the main examples being David. I think
Right,
that's kind of what he looks for when he chooses a leader, is having that confidence.
for sure. Confidence is an important one. Yeah.
Mhm.
I
Anyone
think
else?
I think he looks for a lot of trust, which goes into what Levi was saying. I think trust is a big part of it because I don't think the God of Israel, whenever the God of Israel chooses a leader, it's usually someone who's leading the Israelites to whatever milestone that the people of old were trying to get to, right?
Hmm.
So if you don't have trust in the God of Israel is not going to choose you to try to lead his people because that's not going to work because you're going to be like, I don't really know what to do. And I think the God of Israel is supposed to do it, but I'm not entirely sure. So we're just going to sit and twiddle our thumbs and
Yeah.
see what happens and wait. So I think trust is a big part of it.
Right. And I saw a comment that said humility. Humility is also a huge one by Felicia. Yes, humility is a huge trait that the God of Israel looks for. Bravery as well. Very true. Any other traits, guys?
I was thinking, well, I was thinking humility as well, but a good one is also faith.
Yeah,
Put
for
your faith in
sure.
the God of Israel so that he can help elevate you and show the nation what it means to be a leader, like what it is to run and rule over a
Mhm.
state.
Right,
Yeah.
for sure.
And I think even Corrine said courage, humility, and obedience. And
Mhm.
specifically, like with humility and obedience, if it's a king that has a bunch of riches, a bunch of wives, concubines, the entire nation at his feet, um, he has to be humble, and not necessarily to his people because he's the king, but like to God of Israel, like you have to know your place, and with that does come obedience. I think
For
that's
sure.
a huge one. Yeah.
Yeah, and we have another comment saying, as a leader, you can still learn and hear different opinions or ideas to solve problems. Absolutely, because you can't just lead on your own. That's why we have so many leaders in this nation as well. We have different leaders and rise from different areas, someone that can lead a family, of course. So you look for all of these traits and all of these characteristics in people. God of Israel looks for all of these characteristics and all of these traits in the people he chooses to lead his nation. So, moderator, can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so these are just some examples of characteristics that the God of Israel looks for in his leaders. We have, like people said, humility, we have wisdom, compassion, loyalty, faith, courage, strength, and a whole bunch of other characteristics as well. So can we go to the next slide, please? So we're going to start off talking about humility and wisdom. And when I think of a humble leader and a leader with a lot of wisdom, I immediately thought of King Solomon and his immense sense of wisdom. So can we please go to the next slide? And can someone read this verse, 2 Chronicles 1, please?
I don't mind reading.
Okay, go.
Verse 7. In that night did God appear unto Solomon, and said unto him, Ask what I shall give thee. And Solomon said unto God, Thou hast showed great mercy unto David my father, and hast made me to reign in his stead. Now, Lord our God, let thy promise unto David my father be established, for thou hast made me king over a people like the dust of the earth in multitude. Give me now wisdom and knowledge, that I may go out and come in before this people. For who can judge this? Who can judge this thy people that is so great? And God said to Solomon, Because this was in thy heart, and thou hast not asked riches, wealth, or honor, nor the life of thine enemies, neither yet hast asked long life, but hast asked wisdom and knowledge for thyself, that thou mayest judge my people, over whom I have made thee king. Wisdom and knowledge is granted unto thee, and I will give thee riches and wealth and honor, such as none of the kings have had that have been before thee, neither shall there any after thee have thee like.
Okay, thank you, Levi. So let's take a second to take this in. The God of Israel himself appeared to Solomon and said, I will give you anything you want. Ask for it and you will have it. He could have asked for women. He could have asked for riches. He could have asked for all of his enemies to be defeated. He could have asked for anything in the world, but he said, you know what, God of Israel, I want wisdom and knowledge so that I can give it back to my people, so I can use it for the benefit of my people, and that ultimately benefits the God of Israel. And the God of Israel said, okay, you know what? That was a really good answer. So what I'm going to do is give you more than what you asked for. Because when the God of Israel sees that you're doing something not only for yourself, but for the benefit of his family, he's going to bless you immensely and even more than Solomon asked for. He was going to give him riches that no king has ever seen before. He was going to give him all the wisdom and the knowledge so that he'd be able to lead Israel in the right way. Like the God of Israel saw that humility and saw that wisdom in Solomon and said, you know what? Because you asked me for something selfless, I will give you even more than what you asked and what you thought you would get.
And just to mention, Miriam, like that's a complete 180 from the Dark Triad traits. We talked about entitlement, selfishness. You
Right.
always think about you, yourself, and I, like nobody else but yourself. But he chose a quality that he can use to help his people navigate the difficulties of life, which is wisdom, which is like a huge reflection on who Solomon really is. It's not entitlement, but he wants to use that quality to help elevate his brethren.
Right.
I personally think that was a really good choice. Like it's ingenious.
Yeah. It's the ultimate choice.
Yeah, 100%. But just even add to that, like judging people alone is a huge thing. Everyone thinks they have the right to judge people. Everyone thinks they are capable or qualified to judge people. But judgment is a huge topic. It's a huge deal because judgment is a reflection of who you are. Not everyone's up to the standard of judging people.
Mhm.
That's a great point, Ezekiel. I never even looked at it like in that perspective. Because even with today, you got like the Supreme Court and all these judges, and they don't really fully understand the importance
100%.
of that position. Like
Yeah,
you could just take it. So many instances where a police officer would shoot an innocent black man and he's left off the hook because they don't understand the value of life. When you're
Right.
put in that
exactly.
position to judge, people are relying on you, and just the way you put it perfectly, just perfect example. Solomon understood that role, understood that power that he held as the king, the importance of what he could do as leadership, and all he wanted was to make sure that he would do his job in the best possible way to make sure that he could protect his people. So, truly,
Yeah.
just a standout man.
Mm-hmm.
And even what he asked for is so like key. Like I don't know what I would do if that I was in that situation. Like if God was asking me, what do you want? Because there's like a lot of forethought into that. Like he could have solved any of his immediate problems, or he could have been something superficial, but he chose wisdom, and it's the wisdom to know when to be kind, but also when to be strong, when to be compassionate, but also when to be um mean, or when to be confident, and when to be all these things, where it's like that's like the ultimate thing. Like you have to have that wisdom in order um to learn from people, but also like reign over people and be king, to have that many wives. I mean, to use all those facets of the traits of being a leader in the right way for the best result for his people. And I think that's really like really impressive. Like that's what's to ask for.
For sure. And we have a comment here from C Fields. Our one who poses all these characteristics is our master teacher, Elder Shadrach. Thanks and more thanks to Elder Shadrach. Yes, yes, yes. Everyone put some fires and some sevens in the chat
Like,
for Elder Shadrach. Thank you, Elder Shadrach, for everything that you do. And yes, he does embody all of those traits, and he is what the God of Israel was looking for a leader for his nation. And he's been doing that forever. So, yes, again, thank you to our Elder Shadrach, our master teacher, for embodying all of these traits that the God of Israel looks for in a leader. Do we have any more comments before we go on to the next thing?
I do want to really touch on something that Levi said, and
Mhm.
particularly about being a judge. Like that's a serious position when you really think
Right.
about it. Like my decision, my discernment is what to determine whether you get to live or not. My
Yeah.
decision is going to determine whether you're going to be in prison for the rest of your life or not.
Mhm.
That's serious. Whether you're going
Right.
to spend 25 years isolated, taking a break from society, and
Right.
so I would really hope that the person making that decision is someone that's well qualified to do so,
For
someone
sure.
that's considerate in all avenues of life and what makes up the whole human existence.
Right, exactly. And King Solomon, he was the person that everyone was going to about the smallest little tiffs that they had with their neighbor. So if
Yeah.
he didn't have that wisdom to like even be like strong and be like, okay, I know these people are coming to me with every single one of their little problems, and I'm not going to go crazy on them. Let me just, take that breath and answer their questions, give them their orders, whatever it is. It takes a lot of wisdom and humility to even do that. Um,
Mhm.
and we have a comment from Felicia Singleton. Yes, but you have to know, respect, and understand the law. For sure, for sure. Because if you don't have that respect, if you don't understand the law, then how can you rule over a people, right?
Mhm. I think even talking about judging and judgment and making decisions, there's like a huge weight to that. That of course you do need that respect and knowledge of the law and of your people on the human aspect. But I'm just thinking, even like as a person that's growing into a fully fledged adult, it's hard for me to make a decision for myself. And I
Right.
have all the tools and wisdom that Solomon had. Just thinking of like reigning over like a whole nation of people that are sometimes selfish and bitter and sometimes don't know anything and just need your help. I mean, me doing that to myself is a task within itself, but that just really shows like the wisdom, and kind of what he asked for was really the perfect thing, and that like weight of judgment is just, it's just really heavy for sure.
Right, exactly. And all different types of people are the people that come to you. You can't just get one type of the good people
Yeah.
or the people that you like. Like you have to listen to everyone and everything they have to say, whether you like it or not.
Hmm.
We have a comment from Herbert Rainey. From the onset, it has stood out to me just how much the nation pours into our youth, preparing them for leadership. I remain humble and always ready to listen and learn from our young leaders. Thank you, thank you, thank you
Big up,
so
Sherbet.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you. It's so much appreciated. Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, let's move on to the next trait that we have. Moderator, can you please bring the next slide up? Yes, so compassion is another important trait that the God of Israel looks for in the people he chooses to lead his own people. So when I was thinking of compassion, of course there are a lot of people in the Bible that embody this characteristic and this personality trait. But someone that stood out to me was Joseph and the story of Joseph. So Ezekiel, would you like to take this over?
Of course, of course. And even before we dive into that story of Joseph, in particular, one thing I wanted to really mention was just to really talk about compassion in and of itself.
Right.
And I'm sure you've all heard about sympathy. So I want to start with sympathy first, because
Mhm.
sympathy is the ability to understand where someone's coming from. You know, you can relate, you can probably feel what they're feeling.
Mhm.
But just but just to elevate that even further, when you share the same feeling as somebody that you care for, that then becomes empathy. And to transcend that one level even higher, when you feel that hurt, that suffering that someone's facing, and you have the desire to alleviate them or to help them overcome that suffering, it then turns into compassion. And that's what I really like about this quality that you even chose, that you identified. Compassion is when you feel the hurt of your loved ones and you have the desire to fix that or to help them get through that feeling. Because hurt is such a like, it's not good to feel hurt, if you get what I'm saying.
Right.
So having a compassionate leader, when that person sees that their people is being hurt, then they themselves are going to do things to help the people, which is a quality that the God of Israel is definitely looking, because the God of Israel is a family man. He
Mhm.
loves his family. And so you can see that in the commandments, you can see that in the greatest commandment. So compassion is definitely a quality that the God of Israel is looking for in his leaders.
Mhm. I agree. Compassion is super, super, super important because it's like in some way, you also need to relate to the people that you're
Yes.
ruling over. And how can you relate to them if you don't have empathy for them or compassion for them, or at least be like, I understand where you're coming from. I understand why you would feel that way. If you're just leading with a firm hand and with no sort of understanding, no one's going to want to come to you and tell you what's going on, or no one's going to think that you're a good leader, because if they don't feel that sense of comfort with you, or if they can't feel like they can relate to you in any way, why would they come to you and tell you about what's going on with them? What would it matter to you if you can't even relate?
100%. Very, very important stuff.
Mhm.
A leader has to be in touch with their people and be able to speak with them and understand them. If you don't understand the people or what they want or what they need, how can you lead them? How can you give them what they need to be successful in life?
Right.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because a leader might, in a lot of ways, be like a singular entity, but us as a nation, like we're supposed to move in unity, like we're one body, one like family. And if you don't have compassion for your brother, your sister, your elders, your the people that you're supposed to love and respect, you then then what are you doing? Like what are you doing leading this people? So I think that's definitely a really important trait to have.
Right. For
Yeah.
sure.
But yes, back to the story. So if you haven't heard about the story of Joseph, just to give you the Sparks Notes version of the story, basically Joseph, he's one brother of 12 or of 11, and his brothers sold him into slavery because his father Jacob really favored him. He loved Joseph, but his brothers, because of that, were very jealous, and so they sold him off to the Midianites, and the Midianites took him into slavery into Egypt. Now, although in the beginning of the story, Joseph had a very hard time, he was treated very poorly. Wasn't as bad as the 400 years that we endured today, but was still treated bad. And because of that, he had his ups and downs, but eventually he rose up in the ranks and eventually became top, the right hand person to the Pharaoh, because he's Joseph, the king of dreams. He's already interpreting all these dreams. But then one day, his brothers came to Egypt to harvest, I think it was grain or food, to receive grain because there was a drought, there was a famine all across the land. And when Joseph saw them, he was shocked. And although he still loved them and stuff like that, he still wanted to mess around with them. And so he I believe it was the youngest brother, Benjamin. He had Benjamin go into the dungeon and to see how his brothers would react. And surprisingly, although that they treated him differently, they really cared for Benjamin. And so when Joseph saw that, he had a really huge change of heart. Long story short, he let Benjamin free. He showed them that he was still alive and well, and he was the prince of Egypt. And as a result, because he still loved his family, because he still cared for his family, because his family was suffering due to the drought and to the famine, he gave them the land of Goshen, which is a nice, fertile, and flourishing land in Egypt. I don't know about you, love, but that's compassion right there. Even though he went through all of that stuff, even when he was down and his parents, threw him into, not his parents, his brothers just threw him into slavery. When he saw his family members suffering, he still stood up for them. He still gave them the best treatment because he's still emotionally connected to his loved ones.
For sure. And it's just like Joseph, one, he didn't forget his family just because of who he was. He was literally Pharaoh's right hand. Like he was in those important meetings. He was next to Pharaoh all the time, guiding Pharaoh, counseling the Pharaoh. And he still, even after all of that, he didn't say, "Oh, do you see who I am? Like, why would I even give you guys the time of day when you literally sold me to the Midianites? Like, you're no family to me."
Yeah.
But he gave them Goshen, which is, he did not even have to give them a whole plot of land. He could have sent them back with some grains and maybe some animals, but he gave them land also so that he could be close to his family because he wanted that for him and his family.
And I mean, that just really shows blood is thicker than water. And I mean, he, like you said, like they could have had such different turnout. But I think looking at your family, I mean, no matter how really they treat you, I mean, you would do anything for your family. I mean, my brother is my brother, my sister is my sister. And I mean, compassion is such an important, like you can be this leader that can have that confidence, that can have that command, but without compassion, your people won't look at you as that family, or they won't respect you in that same way. But it's definitely a really important trait to have.
Also, like, can we also like talk about like Joseph's brothers were some grade A haters? No joke. They saw him with the jacket, he was always talking about these dreams, and they just felt jealous, they threw him into slavery,
That's the whole madness,
Yeah.
Could you imagine that? It's like you're flaunting your drip, and then your brothers want to throw you into slavery. That's
like, you hate me that much? Like,
could never be me, for real. Could never be me. Right, ignore the name tag. But in all seriousness, just what I think is really interesting is Joseph, he was put in that position where all he could do is rely on the God of Israel. Like Ezekiel said, he was knocked down to like the lowest of lows and the worst possible position. And the only thing he had was his God. And I think that changed him. That experience changed him. I think coming out of that terrible situation, he had faith in God. So when he saw his brothers coming through, he was like, I'm sure he felt a little bit resentment, but he decided to put up this test, have Benjamin sent to that dungeon to see how they would react, see what God's plan was. We're people of signs. We always try to look for signs, and I think he was looking for that sign to see did his brothers really change, did they grow, and through seeing that reaction, he was able to see that change and growth, and that's what led him to say, have that compassion and forgive them. And so I just think that it's a really an amazing story, and showing you just how Joseph changed over time, how he was able to grow into such a great and powerful leader that will go on to just influence all of Israel.
You know what, Levi? I really want to touch on something real quick, because as I hear you speak, all these qualities connect with one another, especially in that story in particular. you know, because like Joseph was at the very bottom, like he was in the cage, he was in the dungeon, like his
Yeah.
food was thrown on the floor. He had to run and get the food before the rats got there. You
Mhm.
get me? That's low. That's very low. But yeah, let humility be your walking stick. He was humble. He was at the lowest, but still rise to the highest. Which I really love that about the God of Israel, and I like that that's like built into the culture. You know, our
Mhm.
approach as an Israelite is meekness, humble, humility. Let the
Mhm.
God of Israel do what the God of Israel got to do, and
Right.
just imagine the feeling you get when you arise over everybody else, and you weren't even looking to get there. People be thinking, "Oh, how did he get there?" I'm sure Joseph had a lot of enemies within the whole Egyptian
For
structure
sure. For sure.
because of his approach.
And you're able to see the wonder of the God of Israel and how it doesn't take much for the God of Israel to see you and to bless you. But once you put that effort in, like we said, Joseph was in the lowest of the lowest, but he used his relationship with the God of Israel, and not even in a knowing way. He wasn't like, oh, let me do this so I can get here. He was just praying to the God of Israel, using his connection with the God of Israel, and hoping that one day he'd be released, if anything. But
Mhm.
eventually he was Pharaoh's right hand. That's not even something he could have ever dreamed of, but he
Like
got there. And that was because of his faith and the amount of trust that he put into the God of Israel, like Hadassah had mentioned before, with having that trust.
just
Mhm.
imagine, uh, he went from a criminal to being basically the vice president.
That's
Who do you know could pull that off?
That's crazy.
That's insane.
Of a nation that wasn't even his. Like,
Right,
Exactly.
exactly, exactly. But
good
through the
point.
God of Israel, anything is possible. So I'm not surprised that it happened, but the way that it happened was just insane, absolutely insane.
You know what? One more
Yeah,
thing I wanted to mention. Sorry, I didn't
mhm.
cut you off,
No,
but
go.
because this is the topic of compassion. Personally, to me, I think compassion is an honest display of love. You know, it's like when you love someone so much, you start to feel what they're feeling, and
Mhm.
like and because you can see that person is showing you or displaying that or expressing that, it makes you feel like you're closer to that person. You know, oh, I'm hurt because you're hurt, and because you're hurt, I'm going to do something about it. Hopefully, you go about it in a more constructive way, but it just goes to show how people could be pushed to do things because they have compassion for their loved ones.
For sure, for sure. And we have a comment: GOI makes the impossible possible, and that is 1 trillion% true. We see it in basically all the stories that we read in the Bible. You would think that most of these things are impossible, but they happen, and that's
Yeah.
through the God of Israel. I tell you the truth. I lie not when I say rise is why. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
If everyone could drop some sevens in the chat, some fires in the chat. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Share this video with your friends. If you want Rise being wise to everyone else, share the video with your friends, your family, your coworkers, the CEO of the company you work at. Anyone you could get your hands on, please. Everyone, share, like, and subscribe. Okay, let's move on to the next trait. So we have strength and integrity. So let's go right into the next slide, please, moderator. Can someone please read the scripture we have?
I can read it.
Okay.
And when they were come to the place which is called Calvary, they were there they crucified him and the malefactors, one on the right hand and one on the left. Then said Jesus, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And they parted his raiment and cast lots. And the people stood beholding, and the rulers also with them derided him, saying, He saved others, let him save himself, if he be Christ, the chosen of God. And the soldiers also mocked him, coming to him and offering him vinegar, and saying, If thou be the king of the Jews, save thyself. And a superscription also was written over him in letters of Greek and Latin and Hebrew, This is the King of the Jews. And one of the malefactors which were hanged railed on him, saying, If thou be Christ, save thyself and us. But the other answer rebuked him, saying, Dost not thou fear God, seeing thou art in the same condemnation? And we indeed justly, for we receive the due reward of our deeds. But this man hath done nothing amiss. And he said unto Jesus, Lord, remember me when thou comest into thy kingdom. And Jesus said unto him, Verily I say unto thee, today shalt be with me in paradise.
So for strength, thank you, Adasa. So for strength and integrity, of course, we have Jesus the Christ. Here in this scripture, Jesus was about to be crucified by his own people, mind you. And while this was happening, they were still mocking him and saying, if you say who you say you are, then you can save yourself and we don't have to be doing this. They were
Crazy.
accusing him, mocking him, saying all these things. And still, Jesus was saying, calling out to the God of Israel, saying, Forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. They don't understand the magnitude of what they're doing. They're ignorant. Please do not punish these people. Please do not punish my people. And that just, for me, I am so sorry. But if you are cursing me, you're putting me up on the cross and I'm about to die. I am doing anything and everything I can to show you exactly who I am. So I'm not dying, because that is crazy. Imagine like having that much strength and integrity and faith in the God of Israel to be like, you know what? My job is not to show these people, to show my people who I really am. I came here, I did the job I had to do, nothing more, nothing less. This is exactly what was meant to happen. Does it suck? Yeah, of course it does. But it is what it is, and I have to go with it. And Jesus the Christ showed immense strength because, like, he's what? Like, even when I read that, even though I've read it so many times, every single time I read it, I'm still flabbergasted by the fact that he stayed true to his morals, even at his lowest point. Like, I'm so sorry. This has to be the lowest of the lowest point. Like, being strung up by your people and persecuted and accused of being exactly who you are just for you to die because you had a job to do and the God of Israel put you on this earth for a reason. That takes so much strength, and his level of integrity is one that I don't think anyone can reach, because that is the pinnacle of strength and integrity right there.
Yeah, but I will
It's
say you said he has the lowest of the low right now, and I wouldn't say totally physically, yes.
Yeah, for sure.
But the mental and spiritual fortitude
Yeah.
that he has in this moment, and I think it's important to note that because he had a goal, like a higher purpose, something that superseded his need to be physically comfortable and alive. And
Right.
it was something that was so big that it didn't it didn't matter really what happened to his physical body. What mattered was the people and his goal and what the God of Israel put him on earth to do. And I think that's important, something to really learn from, like, as human beings ourselves
Yeah.
and people and rise and going through life, to have like a dream and goal with Israel within ourselves that is so big, that's something that can make you so physically weak or seem so physically distraught, that can make you seem like that, but on the inside, spiritually, mind and mentally, it's you have that strength and integrity where in the face of mockery, in the face of all this chaos happening, you are still focused on your goal.
Right.
It's still what you call it, a painful experience. I can't,
Yeah,
like, it's a
of
very,
course.
very painful experience.
Yeah.
Like, imagine being, strung up, arms on the side like that, nails going through your hands and your ankles. That's a
Yeah.
whole madness. And he still, well, I didn't say kept his composure, but he still had good thoughts in his mind about the people that are doing that to him, which is
Right.
what Miriam said. That's completely ridiculous.
Mhm.
When you actually think and reflect about it. But even when he had to give up the ghost, like he's saying, Father, take this cup from me. You can read that somewhere else, but like, he was feeling so much pain because he's in the human form that, just like, let me die at this point.
Yeah.
And it sucks, or it's very unfortunate that it had to go that far just to be that sacrifice, just to hold that position and then hold on to that responsibility to clear out the sins of your people.
Right.
But that's where the integrity comes in and the strength. Like to have the fortitude to actually take up that responsibility is completely inconceivable in my head. Like, I
Right.
don't know who's that magnanimous amongst us over here to do such a thing, but wow.
And so
Yeah.
real quick, I think we got to get some fires in the chat for that.
Yeah.
Come on, panels popping off. Let's get some fires. But just putting my take on it, I gotta really just agree with everyone what everyone said. Just the strength of caring about others before himself.
Right.
Uh, you have to understand that Jesus, he has the Christ in him. This is that same spirit that was there when Moses parted the Red Sea. All of these miracles, all that power, that's being entrusted into him right now. But even with all of that, he's saying, God, please don't harm the people. They don't know what they're doing. They don't understand what they're doing.
Right.
And even in that, he's worrying about them. He's worrying about his people. He understands his job, that he's there to sacrifice himself for his people's advancement. And it kind of feels like a direct contrast to another popular story, being the story of Samson, where you see a guy who's physically strong, but
Mhm.
mentally he was weak. He got caught up in his strength and his own clout. And although he thought he was strong, in reality he was weak. He broke.
Right.
Um, and just Jesus just shows you kind of the exact opposite of what it really means to be strong. On the outside, if you're just looking with your physical eyes, you just see a weak, beaten up man pinned to a cross, bleeding
Right.
out. But if you understand, you open that spiritual eye and you truly understand what's going on, you see that this is the strongest man to walk the face of the earth.
Right.
Mhm.
Exactly.
That's such a great point, for sure.
Mhm. And even to have like emotional strength as well, to see the
Mhm.
people that you love, to see the people that you came to save, spewing all of those things to you as you're dying in front of them. It's just like, wow, that's my family
Mhm.
down there saying all those things, but they're the ones killing me right now. But I have to stay true to my morals and what the God of Israel put me on this earth to do.
Takes some serious strength to lead these crazy Jacobites. I'll say that.
For
Uh,
sure, for sure. Moderator, can we please move on to the next slide? Okay, can someone read this scripture, please?
I can read it. This is 2 Kings 11. And when Athaliah, the mother of Ahaziah, saw that her son was dead, she arose and destroyed all the seed royal. But Jehosheba, the daughter of King Joram, sister of Ahaziah, took Joash, the son of Ahaziah, and stole him from among the king's sons, which were slain, and they hid him, even him and his nurse, in the bedchamber from Athaliah, so that he was not slain. And he was with her in the house of the Lord 6 years, and Athaliah did reign over the land.
So here we have Athaliah, and she was strong enough to lead Judah as a woman after her son passed. So not only is she a mother whose son recently passed, but she's also a woman. And to have a woman and a power and a position of power like that at that time when it was men, 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 it's just, you know, that there were people who were questioning her every decision, especially if you lead for 6 years. You know how much doubt and negative energy has to be around you for that amount of time. You're ruling over a nation as a woman, as a mother. But she took that and she said, I'm going to do what I have to do when I have to do it. I really don't care what all of these people have to say about me, about who I am. I am here to do my job, and I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. And that's exactly what she did. So I would say that her mental strength is also commendable for dealing with Israel and even the people who were closest to her that could be whispering all these negative things in her ears and basically telling her that she wasn't fit for the job or that she wouldn't be able to do it because of who she was. Oh, you may be too emotional because your son just died. Oh, you may be too much because you're a woman. How would you know how to handle wars and battle and things like that? But she did it for a long time too.
100%. She showed in my mind because all of the forces that are going up against her, it's truly amazing how resilient she was to take on that endeavor. And again, it's a reflection of her strength, of her integrity, where she's coming from, and her sense of responsibility and duty that she has towards the people.
Right.
So, shout out Athalia right there.
Yeah, for sure.
I
Um,
think. Mhm.
I was just saying, I think women in leadership role, I kind of feel like that's kind of what makes Israel to stand out. Um, I I don't know if I fully agree with necessarily people being against that idea because if you go back to Judges, you even have people like Deborah. So I
Mm-hmm.
don't feel like it was too much of a surprise to have females in that world of leadership. That's just my personal take.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, we do know kings, that wasn't an Israelite thing beforehand. That was something that was brought outside of the world. So definitely see the merit in that mindset, in that take, because from the outside of the world, kings are supposed to be men. Leaders of these big nations are only supposed to be men. So the
Right.
idea that Israel would get into that mindset and have that taken over, yeah, I totally see that. And I think that either way, Adelia's ability to once again lead stubborn Jacobites for 9 years is something that needs to be addressed and commended.
Yeah, for sure. Naomi, were you gonna say
Yeah, I
something?
was going to say that same thing. You stole the words from my mouth. I was going to say, while I think us as Israel have always had women, we've always seen power in women, the spirituality of women, the roles that women have. I think, unlike any other nation on earth, we have always uplifted our women because of how powerful we are. And so, while we aren't always in the roles that lead to war or um, violence of death or this sort of like obvious power of being a king or queen, I think we do have other roles in society and in our nation that are just as important and kind of keep us upright. So I think any story in which we have a woman that is in this obvious display of leadership, that is showing these prominent qualities that, yes, we do see a lot in men. And that can be this kind of hardcore person that we don't usually see women in, although in other powerful roles. I think it's always worth reading, and as a woman growing up in this world, I think it's also worth um, kind of reflecting on as well.
And also, kind of just tying what you guys said, women are very powerful. And,
Mhm.
tying that back into the whole idea of the Dark Triad, you can see how that power can be used for evil.
Right.
You have characters like Jezebel, who, I mean,
Yeah.
I could get an entire scroll list of everything that she did. That's a complete 10 other lessons with that.
Right.
But you have, like we was talking about the Samson story with Delilah. Women, they're double-edged sword. They have a lot of power. I don't feel like a lot of other religions or other cultures fully understand that power or appreciate it. Um,
Mm,
it's
100%.
so just seeing how the Dark Triad can play into that is very interesting to me.
You
I
know, two
think
two
even
things. Two things I wanted to mention real quick. My bad. My bad. I just want to mention this real quick.
you're
It's nice
good.
to show. It's nice to show that these traits, these qualities that the God of Israel are looking for. It's not gender specific. It's like as long as you're an Israelite, you feel it in your heart. You too can also have this formula, which is
Right.
really cool and everything like that. As well as I just wanted to mention with what you were mentioning, what you're talking about just now, Lee. I think people do underestimate the power of what a woman can do. Hell knows no fear like a woman scorned. So I've so I think it's definitely important to understand that everyone has certain qualities that they should be aware of, and they could be used for very good things as well as very bad things. But it depends who's guiding you and where that guidance is taking you.
For sure. Hadassah, you were gonna say something?
Yeah, I think even how Levi was bringing in the idea of the dark triad, I think something that we mentioned earlier was the balance between being a leader for the God of Israel and exhibiting traits um, that are consistent with the Dark Triad, I think you could definitely make the argument that Athalia did have to display some of these traits. She had to be a little narcissistic. She
Mhm.
had to be a little self-inflated because she
For
was
sure.
a woman in power, because she had to lead Judah for 6 years or however long, right?
Mhm.
She had to kind of display these traits of, okay, I have to go in, I have to know that the strong, I have to mentally think I'm the strongest, even though physically I might not be. I have to think I'm the strongest. Fake it till you make it. That's what I say. Yeah, fake it till you make it. That's what I say. And for every facet of my life, fake it till you make it. And she was probably like, hey, man, I might not be the strongest physically, and I might not be the strongest mentally, but I'm gonna make y'all think that I am the strongest mentally, 100%. So she had to exhibit some of these traits that are, like I said, consistent with the Dark Triad,
Mhm.
because if she didn't, then she would have gotten walked all over more than she probably was already being walked all over,
Mhm.
because she's a woman in power, because she's probably the only one who's like, oh, I'll lead Judah. And the men are probably like, what are you talking about? You literally need to go, not here. You know what I mean? So she
But
definitely had to display, and that comes with the balance of being a leader for the God of Israel and displaying the traits, for sure.
I also kind of just see it as more so confidence from instead as opposed to just straight up, having uh the traits of the dark triad. Because to me, the dark triad is when that confidence goes overboard.
Right.
You start thinking that you're the best of the best, or nothing can touch you, or it's all you. You know what I mean? When it
Mm,
starts to get out of hand, that kind of thinking. As I see it with Aliyah, is more so just a sense of confidence.
Mhm.
100%.
For sure.
And I do want to mention that, like, when you're talking about the dark triad, you're talking about these are all at the extreme. So this is a person. It's not like forget everybody else. It's about me, 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 me. I don't think personally, like, I do more agree more with Levi. I think Athalia is more so, she exhibits more, more positive qualities. Because once you step into that threshold, it's like it's all about me. Forget everyone else. You guys can all die as long as I get to the top, and I'm cool. And that's one distinction I do want to mention, because when you do look in those corporate worlds, you do look at the society. There's no actual ties. There's no actual, like, bonding between those people, other than we're working for the same company. Unless
Mhm.
they all believe in the same why, or they have we share the same common vision and goal to the bottom of their heart, which not everyone does share. It makes them, in other words, not the best. You don't have your best interest at mind. It could definitely turn into that. And so if I need to sacrifice you, then they're gonna sacrifice you. But in
Mhm.
this position, they're considering and including everyone else into the thought and decision process making.
And all
Sure.
that, it's just for the chasing out wealth.
Mhm.
You got a donation, so
Well, thank you, Tina Jackson.
right when I say chasing for wealth too. So
Tell
don't
me.
take this the wrong way, but
I I will say, when talking about the Dark Triad, it has, of course, the Dark Triad. The name itself has a horrible connotation, but I think it also depends on like your purpose and like who are you being this selfish for, or who are you being this dishonest or manipulative for. Like, if you were to think of like our past leaders, like David was like a warrior. He had blood on his hand. He literally killed people, and
Mhm.
he had that sort of purpose in his life to be that leader, that type of leader, that he just probably displayed a lot of these traits towards like our enemies and towards people that weren't for the God of Israel. And so I think it really does depend on like who or what you're doing it for. Like, I am okay to say I'm narcissistic about Israel. Like, I don't care about a lot of other things except my people and my nation. So I think it in the larger, like me personally, in the individualistic, of course, like terrible. Don't do that. I mean, a little bit, like to a certain extent, but never to the extreme. But if I'm fighting for like my God, my nation, if I'm trying to be a leader within this world, the nation within another bigger nation, then I think it's okay to display some of these traits and be that hardcore and hard edged going into the world, because you kind of have to be. I mean, the rest of the world is.
Mhm.
And we've seen examples in the Bible where our greatest leaders have been this cruel or this manipulative, this dishonest, this. I mean, we are the best of the best. That is an inflated self. Israel is the best of the best. The best of the best. And so, if that's narcissistic, or if that's showing traits of psychopathy, or can't even pronounce the other word, then I think it's a little bit okay, as long as it's for the right
Reasons,
purpose.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think when you're doing it in that sense, it's not necessarily the whole dark triad thing.
Yeah,
And I think
exactly.
of that because I think it was a Rebecca story with Jacob. You know, she lies, right? She's being deceitful, but it's why she's doing that. She's not just doing that for her own advancement. It's not just because, oh well, I like Jacob more than Esau. You know, she's a mother. She loves both of her children. But it's because she got a message from the God of Israel to do so. So what are you gonna do? It's the God. It's God.
It's
You know what I
God.
mean?
You know, I actually want to touch on that, what you just said, Levi, because what you're all describing here is what we talked about in the beginning, which is wisdom, you know, that discernment, that the quality of knowing when to use certain qualities, but for the betterment of yourself and for your loved ones. And thank you, JM, for that $20 donation. We really do
Yes, thank
appreciate
you.
it. Over there. Thank you so much for helping this nation grow. But to get back to you, Levi, but yeah, 100%. That's wisdom right there. That's the quality we were talking about. Like, I understand that sometimes you have to act and operate in a way where it may seem as, oh, you're a deceitful or a bad person because you're being dishonest. But I think it's all about wisdom and intent. You know, what's the outcome you're trying to reach here, and is it wise to do that thing with that person? Obviously, more of these boundaries are more put in place when you're working with your brethren. However, at the same time, you know, you have to be wise in this world. You 100%. I think it was God who told Samuel to lie to Saul to go anoint David. It had to be done. Don't get me wrong, because if you told Saul the truth, then it would have never happened.
Yeah.
That's wisdom over there. That's not dark triad Machiavellian traits. That's wisdom.
Yeah, for
You
sure.
can even take other stories like I sometimes think of Moses. You know, in that wilderness, there were some crazy things that happened in that wilderness, and it drove point to that Moses had to sometimes he even had to take out the people, the ones who were being the weeds. You know, talking back to God, saying, "Can God furnish a table in the wilderness?" You got to get rid of them, or else they're gonna poison the entirety of this country. He said, "Take the sword, cut them down." You know what I mean? Everyone thinks meek, humble Moses. If Moses is going to do it, his job, all right. Even David, like you were talking about earlier, he was a warrior, you know,
Yeah.
but he had those kind of two sides to him. You know, he could be brutal towards the enemy, but kind to his people.
Right.
I just think that when you're in that state, it's kind of what you're doing it for, I guess. When I see those elements of the dark triad, I see it. You're doing it for nothing and no one but yourself. You're chasing wealth, like you said, the corporate. They're fighting over this, you know, betraying and backstabbing each other for these higher ranks, for better pay, for money, physical wealth. Um, my dad likes to say this a lot: lifestyle over living a life. You know what I mean? Choosing to have all the money, the cars, the house, all of that. That's what you're fighting for, as opposed to having what Moses was fighting for, which is a strong family united for one goal and cause, or what David is fighting for, to build a prosperous kingdom for his people to grow up and praying their God. What Rebecca was doing to build a nation of people to set this great nation on the right track. All of these ideas that would seem deceitful or lying, they lead to some of the most greatest things possible, things that were made to benefit the family as a whole.
Right. And you think the God of Israel is the puppet master with all of this. So he knows all of this is happening. He's the one that's setting everyone and everything into place. So people may be looking at it and being like, no, that's deceitful, that's lying, that's horrible, that's narcissistic. Don't do that. But the God of Israel is looking down and like, what are you talking about? This is
Like,
my will.
can you imagine?
My will.
Can you imagine Esau
Yeah.
being the one to get the birthright? He gave it away to Jacob. Could you imagine him being the head lineage, having the 12 sons? He barely honored his birthright. He was definitely not the one meant to carry that responsibility.
No, definitely not. Thank you to Sean Barrett for the donation. Thank you everyone who is tuning in and commenting. We really appreciate everything. Let's keep going with this. I know we're having the back and forth and the huge discussion, but we also need to get into the content.
Sure.
So, Moderator, can you please go to the next slide? Thank you. Okay, so now obviously, of course, a leader for the God of Israel has to have courage, especially dealing with not only the forces outside of Israel, but the forces inside of Israel. So Naomi, can you take over the first part of our courage section?
Yes, for courage, I think we're talking about Deborah. This is one of my favorite stories found in Judges 4, with Deborah. So Deborah was a prophetess who judged Israel. And at this time, Israel was like doing evil and was sold to Caban, king of Canaan. And they reigned terror over Israel for about 20 years. And then Deborah received word from the God of Israel to go to war against the Canaanites, and she called a man called Barak to lead. One of my favorite lines ever. Barak said, "I will go if you go, and if you will not go, I will not go." So there's this woman in this prophet position who's saying, "You're going to war with Canaan, these people that have been over our people for 20 years." The leader of that army said, "I will go if you go, but I will not go if you will not go," which just speaks to the leadership of Deborah, the strength, the courage that Deborah, that he probably sees in Deborah, that he's like, well, I'm leaning on you. You're an inspiration, you know? And then Deborah says, "I will surely go with thee, notwithstanding the journey that thou takest shall not be for thine honor, for the Lord shall sell Sisera into the hand of a woman." And Sisera is the captain of the Canaanite army. And so this is, I think we talked a little bit when we were talking about Athaliah about the power of women. And we're talking about how we know in Israel how powerful our women are, the different roles that our girls and women have, the different the how we are utilized within this nation, a lot of spiritual aspects that go with that as well. But we don't always see this type of story where we're talking about war. We're talking about the leading people into war, the violence and death of it all, the grand gestures of war. And we're talking about women. And Deborah is telling Barak that, yes, you will march and you will go, but it won't be for you, your honor. It'll be for a woman's honor. And so this is the story of Deborah, yes, but it also gets into a woman named Jael, who ends up hammering a nail into the captain of the Canaanite army, Sisera, using tactics like manipulation in order to do that. And so we see that it was really delivered into the hand of a woman. And so we see this powerful woman, this person with courage who is able to do that, both Deborah and Jael, and talking about this entire story and this entire chapter. And we see that taking place in the space that we don't normally see in the Bible when it's talking about women. And so it's just it's one of my favorite historical stories to learn about and to really read.
Yes, and
Yeah.
thank you, Naomi, for that, and thank you to Deshante for our donation. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Much appreciated. So yes, Deborah, she was that being a warrior was not her job, was not in the long job description for what's it called, a judge. A warrior going into battle was not one of those things. So the fact that she did that without any hesitation, without being like, I don't know if I can do it. Are you sure you want me? Are you not talking to the guy behind me? She was ready to go into battle and face the Canaanites head on. And she did it because she knew that they had the strength of the God of Israel behind them. They weren't just going into it willy-nilly. They had the God of Israel with them. And she went with Barak, and they defeated the Canaanites. So it's just another classic story of the God of Israel showing up for his people, who show up for him and who show up for their own people.
Yep.
What I also love about this story makes me laugh is Deborah told Barak, "Yeah, I'll go, but I'm gonna be the one who gets the glory after, right? It's in my name, you know what I mean?"
For
The
sure.
topic of courage, I love the topic of courage a lot. Even when I write my story, I try to center my main character around courage because I just love that. It's so in depth. one thing I just think about that might be a little bit outside is this one anime I used to watch, Tokyo Revengers. Good anime, you should check it out. But one theme that is in the anime is courage. You have the main character who goes out to the beginning of it. He's weak, wimpy, shy, but as he goes through the story, he's pushed to a point where he has to step up to protect the people he cares about. He has to have courage. And, just tying this back into Israel, I see a lot of that kind of examples of that in the Bible, where sometimes a character just has to do what they have to do. We can take Gideon. From Gideon's point of view, he's just a guy living in this world. He doesn't believe that he's able to carry on this duty of leading an entire army, much less an army of only 300 people to take on thousands of Midianites. He doesn't believe. At first he's flabbergasted, but as you go through the story, he gathers courage. He's able to trust in his God, and to the point where he's able to lead this army to victory using clever tactics, and once again trusting in his God. And to me, that's what I love about courage. You have two different ways, like how Deborah is just immediate, or David is just immediate. They immediately know what they got to do. They don't care what the dangers are. But I also really love the aspect of it where it's a buildup, because to me it kind of seems a little bit more human to me, I guess, and it really relates to me, because it's like not everyone's going to be willing to jump headfirst into the pool, but I still commend the ones that are still afraid but are able to do it nonetheless. That's just something that really speaks to me. That's
100%, 100%. And you know what? Before I go on, thank you, Felicia, for the donation. We really do appreciate it. Thank you for being so generous. What I can say was, Levi, I like what you said, because one thing with courage is it complements another quality very, very well, which is faith. Go, Brian, if you could pull up the faith slide. Faith and courage, they go hand in hand. They're like synonymous to one another. And when I think of faith and courage together, the person that comes to mind again is David. You always see me talking about David because David is the guy. David is the one. Because David is like pretty special. David got the sauce. And we love David for that, especially when he had the courage and the faith to go up against Goliath, a beast of a man, a specimen of a human being, 6'9", maybe 7'2", who knows? 400 pounds with muscles, muscles on top of muscles.
Starting for breakfast.
And, he went out there and he says, "How dare the uncircumcised army?" You know what I'm saying? Like, who is this guy? Come out there just making these bodacious claims like that. That's amazing. And he beats him with a stone, with a rock, with a piece of earth, while he has all this metal armor on him. Like, that's crazy.
Right. He had 5 and only needed one shot.
One shot too. So like, courage and faith come together, and he took down Goliath like that, easy.
And when I think of faith, like you said, Ezekiel, you think of David. I also think of Hezekiah, who had a huge amount of faith in the God of Israel. Moderator, can we bring up the next slide, please? Yes, so in 2 Kings 18, I'm going to read it. Now it came to pass in the 3rd year of Hoshea, son of Elah, king of Israel, that Hezekiah, the son of Ahaz, king of Judah, began to reign. 25 years old was he when he began to reign, and he reigned 29 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name also was Abi, the daughter of Zechariah. And he did that which was right in the sight of the Lord, according to all that David his father did. He removed the high places and brake the images, and cut down the groves and brake in pieces the brazen serpent that Moses had made. For unto those days the children of Israel did burn incense to it, and he called it Nehushtan. He trusted in the Lord God of Israel, so that after him was none like him among all the kings of Judah, nor any that were before him. For he clave to the Lord and departed not from following him, but kept his commandments which the Lord commanded Moses. And the Lord was with him, and he prospered whithersoever he went forward. And he rebelled against the king of Assyria and served him not. He smote the Philistines even unto Gaza and the borders thereof, from the tower of the watchmen to the fenced city. So here we have Hezekiah who trusted in the God of Israel, as it says, and he got rid of the idols and the groves and everything that went against the God of Israel because he had that faith in the God of Israel. And he knew that the God of Israel was the ultimate power. Why do you need groves? Why do you need idols? Why do you need serpents and all these things when you have the ultimate power in the God of Israel? You don't have to have all these graven images to connect to the God of Israel. You just need you, yourself, and prayer. Like, you need to have faith and you need to put that into the God of Israel. And look at what it did. Israel was able to defeat the Philistines again and went against the king of Syria and prospered because the God of Israel was with him. And as we know, also, King Hezekiah was the king who got sick and was dying. And because of this, he prayed to the God of Israel and he got his life extended by 15 years. Like 15 years is a long time. And it's a long time to do some crazy work for Israel. And that's exactly what he did for the rest of the amount of time that the God of Israel gave him. So you just see a leader like Hezekiah having that faith in the God of Israel. And you see how not only was he blessed, but Israel was blessed because Israel's leader had that faith and had that connection with the God of Israel. So sometimes it doesn't even have to be the multitude. It could just be that one person that can just deliver Israel out of anything because of the amount of faith that that person has in the God of Israel.
And Miriam, when you say that, it makes me kind of think. I think we kind of mentioned it in this a little bit earlier, where we talked about a leader having to be able to relate with the people. But also, I think a leader also has to be the one to decide what's best for the people. And I say that because he destroyed the idols. And when I think about that term, when you destroy the idols, you're destroying the old ways or what's currently in the status quo. You see that also with Gideon, he destroys the idols, and the people come at him. They're screaming and hollering at him. They're upset. You see that with Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. They're going against the king. They're saying, "No, we will not bow." All that takes courage. You know what I mean? This king is destroying an idols, and some of them Israelites, they're doing wickedness. To them, this is everything. This is what's popular. This is what's in. We need to be doing this and this. But but he's going against that. He's tearing against the status quo. He understands that people may not like it, but this is what's needed for them to achieve their glory. And a leader, I think, it's a tricky balance. It's not easy being a leader because you have to be able to discern whether or not you're doing this in acting for yourself or you're trying to, I guess, act for the betterment of your people. I don't know if I'm explaining it the best way, but you have to.
It makes sense. It makes sense. I love what you say. 100%. He went all of the above. He had to do what had to be done for their sake and for the sake of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's a truly selfless leader right there. And we spoke about this earlier. That's high integrity. It's a lot of strength to do that because now he's hated. He stopped them all from worshiping their gods. I'm sure that there's this secret Baal worshippers, there's secret Nimrod worshippers, and they all hate him now because he stopped their fun. And it is what it is. You got to do what you got to do. But what I'm saying? It is what it is.
And when talking about faith, and I think all of these have a lot to do with each other, and they're all super important. But I even talking about like faith and courage. Levi, you're talking about an anime, and I don't know I don't know what you're talking about, but I know about like the hero's journey, and I learned about this a lot in middle and high school with any English language arts class, where there's like the status quo of a hero, a common man, someone who's nothing, who's called upon by a greater purpose and power, and has to take that step in order to answer that call. And there are tons of steps after that, but the answering that call is that first step. Without that, nothing else. No princess can be saved. No war can be won. So it takes a lot of faith and courage to make that initial step. Without that initial step, using faith and courage, a lot of things like what Hezekiah did wouldn't have happened. He wouldn't have been so blessed. The nation wouldn't have been so blessed without that. And even talking about being a leader and talking about that hero's journey, there's a lot to be learned from that as well. I mean, it takes a lot of faith and courage. It takes all of these aspects, but like faith and courage to take that step, to wake up in the morning and be like, today I'm gonna be great. I'm gonna be a leader. I'm gonna do what I'm scared of. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it scared if I have to, and I'm gonna be great. And so I think it's a lot to learn from, especially like those two aspects and attributes kind of pair together.
For sure. And it's like we've been saying throughout this whole thing, all of these traits and these attributes have something to do with each other. They all intertwine and have whatever something to do with each other. So I think that even though you find faith in one person, you find respect in that same person. You find courage in one person, you find that humility and that strength and that integrity in those same people. So when the God of Israel is looking for his leaders, it's not like he's just looking for this one quality. These leaders have to embody all, if not more, of the qualities that we're talking about today and the qualities that you think of when it comes to leadership, and especially the God of Israel choosing a leader for the God of Israel. So, like we were talking about before with the Dark Triad, and the different qualities that go into that, like we said in the beginning, it's a complete 180 from what the God of Israel looks for in his people. Like, and nowhere in the description of the Dark Triad was there respect, was there compassion, was there faith, was there strength, humility, courage. None of those things. They were all kind of negative traits when they're used excessively, but not necessarily like negative, and to the point where if one of these leaders showed one of these traits, it would be an issue. Because again, what are you using it for? Like Naomi said, you're using it for the God of Israel, you're using it for your people. If you're going to be using these dark triad traits for the God of Israel and for the betterment of your people, the God of Israel will see that. He's not going to punish that and be like, no, you're supposed to be nice, you're supposed to be understanding, you're supposed to be compassionate. No, 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 no. Because if we were nice, understanding, and compassionate with Pharaoh, we would still be in Egypt. So when it comes to the dark triad and those traits, using them positively for the God of Israel is really what we need to do as a people and what the God of Israel looked for when he looked for his leaders. But I have a question for the panel. What form of leadership do you guys think is the most effective?
You know what? I think there's a place and time for everything. You know, I think there's all of the qualities that are available towards the human existence. All of them can all be used, just depending on when you're going to use them. And it
Yeah.
always goes back to the first quality that we talked about, which is wisdom
Mm-hmm.
and humility. Also, doing discernment. You know, knowing when to use them. There's a place and time for everything.
Right.
Sometimes you have to be a little bit more aggressive. Sometimes you have to be a little bit laid back and relaxed. It just
Mm-hmm.
takes time to see what is needed for that particular circumstance. But ultimately, I think you have to consider your intent. You have to always remember, you know, where it's coming from. You know, where is your heart at in this moment? Have you been praying to the God of Israel? Have you been asking for His help, for His guidance, for His Spirit to be placed upon you so you can make the correct decisions when it comes to ruling His people? And I think that's a very important aspect, that spiritual part of it, because we live in a spiritual world, you know, and so it's important that we get that spiritual help that can help aid us to make those better decisions.
Mm-hmm.
But to even further add on to what I was speaking just now, I think it all ties in back to the commandments and to the greatest commandment of them all. When you look at the Ten Commandments, all of them are strategically put in there to keep the family together because you know, the God of Israel is a family man. And the leader of the nation, the leader or those that rise up to be leaders, all know that very, very, very well. You can look at Jesus, you can look at Moses, you can look at David, Solomon, even today, Elder Shadrach, and the priest. They all embody and understand that the importance of having these rules and regulations and to developing these qualities is to make sure that we stay together as a team and a unit because teamwork makes the dream work. And
Right.
so it's important that we see and acknowledge and respect one another so that we can continue to move forward as a team, you know?
Mm-hmm. That's so true, Ezekiel. Anyone else?
I would like
I
to
don't.
copy and paste Ezekiel's response. Uh, Perfect all around.
Agreed, agreed. Get some snaps for Ezekiel. Get some fires in the chat for that response.
But I really just think he spoke it all. All those traits, I don't really see it as one can be without the other. And how we said earlier, how can you have courage without faith? You know, um,
Mm,
to an effective leader has to be able to use every single one of those traits to the fullest. That's the only way you can achieve that most pure form of leadership. And I think when you look at all of our great leaders like Moses, Deborah, even Hadassah, all of these great leaders have bits and pieces of all these traits in them, all
Mhm.
of that.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think all of them are super important. Super, they go hand in hand. You again, like Miriam said, you can't really be a good leader and have strength, but like not compassion. So all of these are like really, really important. But I think one that really stands out to me is the courage. And I'm going to say courage slash faith because I feel like they're so closely knitted together. And even when we think about Moses, so Moses could have had the most integrity, the most mental strength, the most compassion. But there was a moment where he said, I don't want to speak in front of Pharaoh because of my stutter, the way that I speak. And he had to trust in the God of Israel and that, of course, God of Israel was like, oh, I created you. Like, what are you afraid of? But he had to have that trust, that faith, that courage to really do that. Without that, like, that wouldn't have happened. And so I think we could have a lot of these attributes, but it takes a lot of courage to kind of live them out loud and to show these attributes in the face of the world and to go against the grain in doing so in a lot of different ways. So I definitely think so. Like I think they're all important. Like I don't think I can pick just one, but courage definitely stands out to me.
You know
For sure.
what? I want to quickly hop and just say three more things just came to mind. Number one, like, when you have confidence and you have faith, you get Godfidence. Like you have the God of His you can do anything at this point. So
Because he
I
can
really
do
love that for my people and for my brethren when they have that feeling come into them and they know like, yes, I got this. I can do what it takes. No one can stop me. And so I
Mhm.
really do, those in Cyberland, you find that within yourself, especially when you turn yourself towards the God of Israel, because that is needed when it comes to raising up a community. The
For
second thing I
sure.
wanted to mention was the fact that how we discussed the different dynamics of like how, even the men of Israel and the women of Israel can both take on these qualities to help be leaders in our
Mhm.
communities. And I really do, if you're hearing this again, you got this. You can definitely raise up to these standards, to these qualifications, and please do. And please do don't feel afraid to act out these qualities. It's
Right.
needed, definitely needed, especially amongst the youth. If you
For
have these
sure.
qualities feeling in your heart,
Mhm.
definitely go and act out. It's needed.
Mhm.
The last thing I wanted to mention, I think it just slipped my mind. Yep, it slipped my mind. Forget it. Hadassah, you're up. I
Um,
forgot
yeah,
it.
like everyone has said so far, I think you can't have one without the other. You can't exhibit or you can't exude humility without respect, or courage without strength. Um, but that's not to say that you can't lead the nation with a firm hand without having that compassion, without having courage, without having respect, because tough love is a thing for a reason. You know what I mean? Like
For sure.
people have people love toughly. People love a little hard, but it's like at the end of the day, you still know that person loves you. So that's definitely not to say that you can't. How do I say this? You can't just lead and still stick to your own morals and still, uh,
Mhm.
lead with a little bit of a firm hand. But definitely, like everyone has said, you definitely can't just have one and then be like, oh, I'm a leader. I'm humble enough. So now I'm a leader. You know what I mean? That's not how this works.
Right, exactly. And I think that's so important, especially as the future leaders of this nation and the future, teachers of this nation. We need to have these attributes to teach the world, like the God of Israel instructed us to. And we have to take the mantle from the leaders above us and do the things that they taught us and lead and teach in the ways that they taught us, in the way that we would want to be taught, so that, we can teach all nations, get people to find out who their God is, and be that powerful nation that the God of Israel so wants us to be. So, thank you, thank you, thank you so much to my wonderful panel. I absolutely loved the discussion we had going on tonight. Thank you guys. And to our viewers, thank you so much for tuning in to tonight's Bible study. I really, really hope that you guys got, even if it was a little piece of something from this Bible study. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you again for all of the donations that we got. Thank you for all of the likes and all of the Fires and the Sevens, thank you so much for tuning in. Please join us tomorrow at 2 p.m. for our broadcast. And always make sure to keep tuning in week after week for the Bible studies and the Saturday broadcasts. Again, I would like to say Happy New Moon to everyone. I hope you guys had a great time like we did. We really enjoyed putting this together for you guys. So we hope that you enjoyed watching and listening to us. Um, yeah, and with all of that, I would like to say peace.
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 Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.